This is part 4 of Thunder Bay, A Time to Remember.
As war loomed larger and larger on the horizon of the 30s, so did the international stature of another Port Arthur personality. C.D. Howe was the Hill City's representative in the Canadian Parliament and one of the most efficient and brilliant cabinet ministers in the nation's history. During his tenure of office, he occupied every important cabinet post, and the lakehead basked in his reflected glory. It was appropriate that an area which had been among the first to experiment with electric lights, telephones, and rapid transportation should be represented by a man who was to guide Canada into the atomic age. Mr. Howe's influence helped renew stagnant local industries and prepared them for wartime production. Everyone knew another war was coming. This time the omens were clear for anyone who could read the daily newspaper headlines or listen to a radio. When war was finally declared, the Twin Cities were ready with their contribution. A generation of young men joined the services. New prefabricated houses were constructed to accommodate thousands of workers who poured into the lakehead from Western Canada. The Port Arthur shipyards built corvettes for the Royal Canadian Navy. In Fort William, the Canadian Car and Foundry Company produced Hawker Hurricanes for the RCAF, and later Helldivers, the famous torpedo dive bombers, for the Americans. Millions of dollars were raised in victory loan drives. Tons of scrap metal were collected. Even local theaters assisted from time to time by offering free admission to any boy or girl who would donate a tin of cooking fat. Books, clothing, anything that could be employed in the war effort were gathered by the truckloads. But the proudest achievement for Thunder Bay was the combat record of its sons. Men from the land of the sleeping giant fought U-boats in the North Atlantic, battled up the boot of Italy with the 1st Canadian Division, flew in the Battle of Britain, and served with the Dam Busters. Morel and Keane led the Lake Superior Regiment from Normandy to Germany. They led it through Solier and Bruges, through the Hochwald and Hengelon, in some of the grimmest fighting of the war. The regiment was awarded 71 decorations, and its record stands proud among a proud people. A Navy corvette was christened the Port Arthur. A minesweeper was named the Fort William. A motion picture was produced on the exploits of Corvette Port Arthur, and its world premiere was held in the city at the Colonial Theatre. The luxury steamers Harmonic and Noronic continued to carry passengers across the Great Lakes during the war. The $5 million Noronic had been constructed in Port Arthur. There were other ships in the harbor, captured German barges, and in Current River, German prisoners of war mowed grass and cleared brush. There were ration books for coffee, sugar, milk, butter, and meat, for gasoline and liquor. Lakehead women used leg makeup and dreamed of the day when they could buy a pair of nylons. Local war industries produced a unique byproduct: jewelry manufactured from dural and plexiglass. Workers designed earrings, brooches, and pendants for their wives and sweethearts. At the Canada Car, there were some who appeared to do nothing else. And there were the casualty lists, longer and more tragic with each passing day. Killed, wounded, missing in action. On VE Day, May 8th, 1945, there were no wild celebrations in Port Arthur and Fort William, only prayers of gratitude and of remembrance. The workers from the West went back to the prairies. Industry slowed, and the lakehead was left to itself again. After the excitement of the war years, people were restless, dissatisfied. There were the old hungers for knowledge, for prosperity, for the very best of everything. New schools were built. Millions of dollars were spent on education. But young people graduated and left for cities of greater opportunity. Industries were offered inducements to establish themselves at the lakehead, but there were better offers from bigger centers. Air travel reduced the importance of the railways, and as rail service declined, so did the vitality of the Twin Cities. For the first time in their history, Port Arthur and Fort William appeared to have lost that driving force of optimism that had propelled them along the rivers of the past into the age of atoms and moon rockets. Now their older citizens seemed apathetic, their children indifferent. On September 17, 1949, the once proud flagship of the Canadian steamship lines, the Narration, burned in Toronto Harbor. Luxury passenger service on the Great Lakes was coming to an end. Of course, there were those who remembered, those who were stung into action rather than apathy. The sports enthusiasts were among them. Bill Tomlinson and Ted Whalen decided it was time the Lakehead won another hockey championship, so they started to build a team. Outstanding players such as White, Miguet, and Bakary were lured back to the Lakehead from teams in southern Ontario and the United States. The Twin Cities gathered together their best, and, as usual, their best proved better than anyone else's. In 1948, the Bruins won the Memorial Cup. Port Arthur built a new stadium. In 1951, Fort William built the Gardens. In track and field, local athletes shattered district and Canadian records. And in the Canadian Intercollegiate Track Meet of 1951, held in Montreal, every Canadian university that competed had a representative from the Lakehead on its team. Fort William Redskins won a national football championship, and Fort William Rowers won title after title. Outsiders might refer to the area as a cultural wasteland, but only because the Lakehead itself took for granted its wealth of talent. There were the Cambrian players, with 20 years of productions and national honors to their credit. Sheila Burnford, who drew upon the beauty of the land to compose The Incredible Journey. There were artists like Susan Ross and playwrights like Michael Nimchuk. There were opera groups, choirs, and the symphony orchestra, CBC producers, writers, and announcers, and the president of CTV, Murray Chirkover. A cultural wasteland, why Lakehead University, inaugurated in 1965, was growing bigger and faster than anyone could have imagined, and the school system was among the most progressive in the country. A wasteland, not in any sense of the word. At the crossroads of a continent, Port Arthur and Fort William were a funnel for the nation's grain, iron ore, pulpwood, and newsprint. From their deep-water harbors, 15 million tons of goods were shipped annually. And yet, they were a depressed area. Somehow, it didn't make sense. The people wondered and called on experts for advice. There had to be a solution. Something had to be done. But everyone knew the solution, even if some didn't want to admit it. They must unite. Unite as they had before on so many memorable occasions. For too long, Port Arthur and Fort William had backpaddled on the rivers of the past, divided by old feuds and meaningless rivalries. Long ago, the symbolic division of intercity had vanished as businesses and industries spread across its length in a never-ending chain. Together, they could face the future with a combined strength of 100,000 citizens speaking with a single voice. A voice that could boast that Radisson dropped by one day and La Vérendrye visited a while. A voice that could speak the language of the land, describe the beauty of a falls taller than Niagara, deep canyons, wide rivers, and endless forests. A voice that could tell of mountains of iron, hills green with copper, and streets of silver. One voice, a single voice to speak of men like Marx, Gorham, and Cox, and McKellar, Murphy, and Anderson. A voice that would roar out for Laskin and the rest like thunder out of the land of Nanabiju. And in the new decade, make a nation stop and listen at the name of Thunder Bay.
Thanks for listening, and if you want to learn more about Thunder Bay and its historical and musical past, go to bandwiki.ca. I'll be posting probably a lot more videos of local artists and local folklore. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Play it again from part 1.